Hi, everybody. We thought we'd switch it up, put the moderator on the left this time, so keep things spicy here. These director chairs are amazing, so if things, just want to let you know, if things get off to a bad start, I might just say cut and then just start from the top. If that's okay. Just want to let you guys know. Okay, so I want to introduce this panel here. My name is Danny. I am the Vice President of Business Development, Emerging Revenue at Meebo. On my right, going from left to right, I should say, I have Lisa Brewer, who is the Director of Digital Audience Development at Time Inc. and the Style and Entertainment Group. Then we have Kimberly Lau, Vice President of Business Development at Hearst Digital Media. Chandra, Magee, Senior Director, Audience Development at The Economist. Lisa Schneider, General Manager, Digital Products at Budget Travel. And David Singer, Vice President of Product Development at TV Guide. So thanks, guys. Today we're going to be talking about engagement, and this is a topic today that really has been sort of threaded throughout our conversation, and so it's been brought up in various capacities. But my feeling, generally speaking, is that we've been speaking very broadly, and this is an opportunity for this audience as well as for this phenomenal group of panelists to be able to speak to some of the more specific things they're doing to boost engagement. And so we're going to cover a variety of topics. We're going to talk about sort of defining engagement. We're going to talk about how engagement is defined in sort of the walls of these organizations. But really kind of we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of what are they doing to drive engagement. And I think that's something that kind of looking at this really diverse and interesting group of panelists coming from 5 different companies to be able to see what are the things they're doing, what are the things that are working for them, and then hopefully you can walk out of here today, as this is the concluding panel, with some interesting ideas. So really quickly, I wanted to hand it over to you guys, and we can start with Lisa. How are you defining engagement within the walls of Time Inc., and what are some of the operating terms that are used? And maybe we can just sort of go down the row after Lisa starts off.
Sure. Very loaded question. But I think that a handful of ways that we're talking about engagement is happening kind of cross-platform. There's engagement, of course, that's happening within our brand pages on Facebook and Twitter, as well as the other social players in the space, as well as engagement that's happening on our sites. And when we talk about engagement on our sites, some of the old metrics come back into play: page views, visits, visitors, et cetera. But then it's also commenting on our articles, shares of our articles, and then overall kind of back on the social media destinations, that fancy referral driving back to the site, as well as things like the likes, the shares, which now you can see on Facebook, as well as commenting, click through, all the rest.
Great. Kim?
I think she took all my answers. No, I mean, I think largely many of the same things. I mean, a lot of it comes back to page views and referral sources and percentage of referrals. I think from a high level, we're looking at audiences in general and where those audiences are around the various platforms that our brands play on. So it's, each of the platforms has their own measurements. In most cases, they're pretty, it starts with basic things like how many fans, how many followers, how many subscribers, and then depending on the platform, there's a variety of others.
Well, we are currently looking at it among these pieces. We also look at it in breaks of 2 in terms of what the activity is in terms of website versus digital in terms of our current apps. So we're looking at it in terms of how those interplay, as well as using the usual likes, looking at likes, commenting, and voting, those types of things.
I would say on top of what everybody else has said, that drilling a little bit further down, it's finding the right measurement of engagement for the particular program or effort that you're looking at. So we might have an effort on Twitter in which we're trying to engage people in a particular conversation. We do something for Travel Tuesdays where we get an editor onto Twitter and he answers questions live about travel and gives recommendations. We're not trying to drive people back to the website. We're trying to have a conversation. We want to engage more people in the conversation. We want them to retweet. We want to get more followers, versus something else where we want to drive people back to the site to participate. I think it's really important to understand what is it that you're trying to do in that particular instance and not try for everything to do and be everything.
There's not much. Whoa, I'm a little louder than everybody else. So to add to that, I think one of the things we do would also be some crossover. So besides looking at retweets and likes and shares across the standard platforms of Facebook and Twitter, or even throwing in Tumblr and seeing how many people would like or reshare that, we try and see who goes from one platform to the other to follow us. Because we are trying to keep with the tone of the platform. Twitter has its own brand of communication, so does Facebook, so does Tumblr. But who will go from one to the other to keep the conversation going with you in different ways? And of course, back to the site, seeing who in your commenting section was somebody who might have just posted on Facebook, and now they want to engage with more people to talk about whatever the topic was. And another way we would measure engagement, of course, is with our mobile apps and how we're able to get people to interact with those compared to what they do on the website.
Great, excellent. One thing that I think we've all felt is that because engagement is a relatively new term, maybe going back to the last couple of years, is that engagement still is not necessarily tied directly to sort of economic metrics. And I know that I spend a lot of my time talking to publishers, and the feedback that I've received is that sometimes when publishers or the kind of stakeholders for engagement inside of publishers are talking about engagement, that they can alienate other stakeholders in the company, whether that's a head of sales or a CRO or a general manager or whatever it might be. I'd love to hear from you guys about, and I might direct this to Lisa to start out, being that we have a revenue owner here on the panel. How are you thinking about translating sort of typical engagement metrics or discussions around engagement, and then kind of tie that back to really specific kinds of economic metrics inside of your org?
I think you mentioned sales, and I think, at the end of the day, right, our jobs are a lot of fun, but we're probably all in it to make some money, and so it does really all boil down to sales. So how can you leverage these efforts in a way that, if you're a content brand and you're not actually doing e-commerce, then you can get sponsors to sponsor. And I think the questions around sponsorship of actual platforms sort of on Twitter and on Facebook are really interesting and still really murky. Some companies are willing to sell those out. They have rules around it. I know Kim mentioned that earlier. Some companies are not willing to sell that. But you need to sort of create a whole out of everything. We definitely try to look at budget travel as a brand overall. And so maybe I'm using social media to drive a lot of traffic and engagement around a particular brand platform. I can then use that to help sell that brand platform. I can go out to an advertiser and say, you know what, people really love this. You want to be here because this is where they're paying attention, and here are the numbers to prove it. And so we use those engagement numbers to turn around and leverage advertiser interest.
Mm-hmm. And what are the specific kinds of engagement numbers that would come up? What is a typical kind of
It can really depend. We have a platform that's really, really popular with our audience. It's called Coolest Small Towns. And if you don't live in New York, you really love this idea. I always say we don't live in America, we live in New York. And so we had an incredibly high level of engagement around this. We had a ton of nominations for the Coolest Small Towns platform. We had a ton of shares on social media for this platform. We had a lot of votes. And so, again, you turn around to an advertiser and you say, hey, we had a 90% engagement rate on this page, right? We had a page, 90% of the people who landed on that page did something. They nominated, they voted, they commented. That's a really high engagement rate. If I were an advertiser, I would want to be there. So that's the type of metric that we would use to turn around and say, hey, this is really compelling for you. Great.
And Kim, you mentioned in the speaker room briefly that at least inside of Hearst, you're not viewing the Twitter stream as sacred territory for monetization. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of debate and a lot of dissenting opinions about that, but we do, with heavy restrictions around it, allow for sponsored posts via Facebook and Twitter. I think that it's interesting because we are very P&L focused and pay a lot of attention, as you know, to what revenue we're bringing in, what expenses we have. And actually, one of the big proponents within our company for social media has actually been sales. You know, from a very different perspective than why other people are into it. But you know, it is for that reason that social is something that's asked on every single RFP that comes through the walls, and we don't always know what that means, but it's always a request. And so, you know, Hearst has a big relationship with Buddy Media. That relationship was actually initially sort of sponsored by our sales team. So, you know, it doesn't come without a price tag, and that's something that they felt strongly enough about. It's interesting because ultimately it is an editorial tool, but it gives them some additional sales opportunities. And so, you know, I think one piece of it though is that we have to. Social is still early enough, it's still nascent enough that we have to sort of take a leap of faith into the investment. And that is definitely something that we continue to push on, which is you can't always justify every dollar or every hour that's spent on it. But we do know that you can't do anything with social unless you have an audience. So the first step is you have to build the audience. If you build the audience, you'll find ways to monetize it. And I think that's not always the case that wins, but it is part of how we think about it.
Great. I wanted to share a quote with you guys I thought was really great. Jeremiah Owing is an analyst I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. He was at Forrester for a long time. Now he's at Altimeter. He said, engagement indicates the level of authentic involvement, intensity, contribution, and ownership. And then he said, it's possible for me to shorten the definition of engagement to apparent interest. And then others have kind of weighed in on that debate, and they said, engagement is just interest. Engagement is interest in the content. And Lisa shared a quote and said that in this case of Coolest Small Towns, that 90% of the audience who visited that section indicated interest by acting. And I'd love to kind of put that back to you guys and say, if engagement is interest, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, what are the kinds of things that you're doing, sort of specific tactics that you're particularly proud of that are increasing interest, increasing engagement in your audiences? And one thing, we did get to do a little bit of pre-panel banter with you guys, and there were some phenomenal anecdotes that came out. So I'd love to have you kind of surface some of those and use this as a platform to talk about some of the things you're particularly proud of. So maybe Lisa, I'll start with you.
Sure. I think one of the great things, obviously, about social is how real-time it is and how many people want to voice their opinions and be part of the conversation. And a way that the style and entertainment sites at Time Inc. are benefiting from this is, let's take the day that, say, Oscar nominations are going to be announced. There's always going to be people who have a very strong opinion about those nominations. Some good, some, there's a ton of people who just got snubbed. And so we've taken a practice of using this as a crowdsourcing opportunity to say to our users on Twitter and or Facebook, who do you think should have had a nomination? And then we get hundreds and hundreds of replies and all sorts of sources. And we turn that into a gallery of content, of a snub gallery, or people who maybe the nominees missed, or people who are making the nominations kind of missed the boat a little bit. And then it's another great point to engage these users again. First, they told us their opinion, which they love to do. And then, you know, half a day later, we can say we have this great gallery of everybody who our users think got snubbed, and we can drive you back to the website where you can be monetized, where you can get really engaged and sucked into other pieces of the site. And People Pets, which is a channel on people.com, has done a very similar thing because people always want to show their adorable pets doing adorable things. So maybe we just did this for Thanksgiving. Show us your adorable pet at your Thanksgiving table. And we got tons of responses, and we turned it into a pet Thanksgiving gallery that users just couldn't get enough of.
Awesome. Kim, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of examples of that. I think one of the brands that we have that's doing a great job of thinking cross-platform and thinking about driving engagement across those is 17. So they've got a program that's actually, I think, 2 years old, and maybe a little bit older than that, where they've actually taken some of the beauty gurus from YouTube and made them part of their 17 Smarties program. And so, you know, they're actually going out, seeing who the girls are that sort of fit the 17 brand but already have audiences, and they've been pulling them in to be essentially sort of guest editors. And you know, that culminates in a variety of programs. So it culminates in additional videos that get distributed on 17 site, but also on YouTube. There's in-book promotion So really, cross-pollinating between the digital and the online, and then of course on the website and through our social media outlets as well. So I think thinking about programs in that sort of holistic way is really one of the interesting. One of the things that we face that I think is a challenge is we tend to see very different audiences across the board on our websites versus our brands. And so I think thinking about these things in more of a holistic way is one way to help drive those. And there's advantages to having those audiences. You need to understand them, but also the more that we can drive them into our various platforms, the more successful we can be.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah.
I'd say one example that we've done is something we call tweetbacks, where we actually use it as an opportunity to support special reports or some of the other brand campaigns that we do. And it starts with announcing on Facebook and Twitter that we're going to be hosting it. It's hosted on Twitter. And it's an opportunity for the users to basically have a conversation for about an hour with one of our editors who's specifically knowledgeable on a specific topic. And it generates a lot of interest. There's usually a reading list that's associated with it if they want to see what we've had to say on that topic previously. It also it generates a lot of tweets and retweets back and forth between the editor and the people that are attending. And there's usually a follow-up piece that's also on the site, which also includes all of the comments that have been included, and it's also sold as a sponsorship on the page. So that would be an example of something that we sort of bring full circle, that engagement piece.
Okay. I mentioned our Travel Tuesdays, where we sort of announce again on Twitter and on Facebook that people can show up on Twitter and get their travel questions answered. We make some similar efforts, as Lisa described, in terms of asking our community for feedback on a particular question. We do something on Wednesdays where we say, hey, it's Wednesdays, it's the middle of the week, you're like slogging through sitting at your desk. We've renamed it Wishful Wednesdays, and we ask people, where do you wish you were? Right now, we get a ton of answers. We've turned that into content, but we turn that into content, let's say a slideshow of the places people wish they were, but most of the images come from user-uploaded photos. So that's another way that we engage our audience, is we invite them to upload their own photos. What we get is amazingly stunning. It's unbelievable. And so we create these beautiful slideshows, put it back out there, and the first time we did this Wishful Wednesday slideshow, we ask it every week. We don't create new content out of it every week. It sort of took a little while. Like, we put it out, I don't remember, maybe at the end of March. And then a few weeks later, for a couple of weeks, it was our top referral back for social media. So, people wanted to see what other people had said. People wanted to see those user photos. The users themselves, wanted everybody to see their photos. And so it really did come around full circle. We got it from social media, and then it went sort of more viral on social media.
One of the things we've also done is, of course, create content from user feedback, polling, comments, turn them into a lot of articles. But I think the most interesting thing we've done lately is we created something called Social Power Rankings. And of course, people love lists. They always want to see a list of top whatever. TV Guide, we want to show you the top shows. And we could look at ratings, or we could look at the actual interaction that our users are having with all of those shows. So what are they checking into? What are they commenting on? What's getting retweeted the most? And taking every little metric we have, and even videos watched. Who's watching the full episode of whatever show through our website, even if it's via Hulu or anything else? And we created a full top 10 based upon user interaction, which of course leads to more user interaction and more engagement, because people want to influence those types of things. And we've seen it work a lot. It led to being almost a predictor of what shows would be canceled and kept for the next season, which was a lot of fun. And I think if you can take the engagement and the interaction that the users are giving you and turn it into something fun, it'll create its own content, and in the end, you could probably get a sponsor for that. You could probably sell that in some form, but you couldn't do it in reverse. You have to build that first. And you have to get the users to trust you that you're doing the right thing with the feedback that they're giving you. So another component, of course, of this is, besides just listing out the shows, we actually have a comment from users. And that comment could be from anywhere. It can be from our own commenting system. It can be from Twitter. It can be from Facebook. It's just wherever we found something interesting that somebody said to us, we want to share it with everyone else.
Great. One thing I want to ask you guys about, and this has been brought up on a couple of occasions today, sort of the differences between the different social platforms and how you're using them. And also, kind of related to that, are you going beyond Facebook and Twitter? And then if so, how? And Chandra, you and I talked about this a little bit because I know The Economist is using Google Plus and is using Tumblr, and you have different stakeholders in the company kind of owning different parts. So maybe I can put you on the spot and ask you to start out and maybe weigh in on Facebook versus Twitter, and then how you're thinking about some of the other platforms.
Sure. Well, Facebook is very much about users wanting to be able to communicate with each other. They want minimal interference from us. They love the fact that we post the articles, they read them, they comment about them, but they don't want us to chime in, answer, respond, be part of the conversation. With Twitter, it's just about broadcasting and letting them know what's the latest and greatest based upon what we think they're interested in, and we do post on a 24-hour clock. So we try to make sure that wherever it's prime time, we are focusing on that particular region to a certain extent. So if it's 9 a.m. in China, we try to include the Chinese stories in the posts during that time. With Google right now, we've obviously just gone live as everyone else has. We are at this point posting less frequently and starting to get a pulse for what is on there, what people want on there. And we're actually going to be asking them to tell us a bit more about how they want to see us use it. There are so many different pieces of functionality that are available to us there that we think that having them tell us what they want and what they need from us is a good place for us to start. And then we've got LinkedIn, and with LinkedIn, it's primarily focused on, we keep the posts much less frequent on there. We are primarily focused on business needs, continuing education needs, and that type of stuff. With Tumblr, it's primarily owned by our editorial team, and it's things that they think are cool and they think will fit within that confine. And those are the primary places where we're right now. We have a small team in China that's working on a couple of the local sites, and they're sort of testing that out so we can decide if we want to start to go into more regional placements. But each one of them definitely has a very different voice and a very different personality. And so we spend the time trying to capitalize on that.
If you were to guess on what you might end up using Google Plus for, based on maybe some of the early indications of the audience composition, where do you think, based on the limited data set, where that might be going?
More interactive pieces, more giving them opportunities to interact with our journalists, because we don't use bylines. There's a certain cachet around our journalists. So giving them more opportunities to interact with them, looking for more opportunities for them to interact with each other, more than just posting comments and going back and forth like that. So some video pieces to it and things like that. But that site right now, we're primarily focusing on what they want from us and trying to see what we can do about building that for them.
Okay, great. And Lisa, you mentioned when we were chatting earlier that you're seeing some interesting differences between Twitter and Facebook as well.
Yeah, I think, and I don't have to tell the people in this room this, but I think it's so important to remember that these people have raised their hand to have this dialogue with us. And it's a win-win for us as brands and them, because they get the news where they want, when they want it, how they want it. And by how, I mean Twitter, Facebook, Google+. And what's really exciting, I think, for us as we watch these audiences grow is, let's use the example of People. It's a celebrity news entity. And the news that people want from people on Facebook is really different than the news they want to be hearing from us about on Twitter. And by that I mean which celebrities they even want to be hearing about are entirely different in these two different mediums. And so what our social media voice has really spent significant time doing is figuring out who these people are that they want to be hearing about. And if we are only going to post 6 to 8 times, let's say, a day in either place, let's make sure those posts count by giving them the celebrity that they want to, or giving them news about the celebrity that they want to hear about. In terms of other great platforms, I'm excited to mention these guys because they haven't really been brought up yet today, but GetGlue, who's similar in the entertainment check-in space to Meebo, which was mentioned, I think, this morning, has been a great opportunity for a brand like EW to kind of get into the entertainment check-in space. And so we're always monitoring what else is out there. Obviously, everyone's going to talk about Facebook and Twitter. When we get RFPs, it's going to be Facebook and Twitter. But there's other companies that are bubbling up. And for GetGlue, EW was really able to step into the entertainment check-in space, as I said. And they did it kind of in 2 waves this past year. Once with getting their must list, where the editors pick 10 pieces of entertainment culture that week that are musts according to the staff, that if you check in, you got an EW sticker, which is their form of badging. And there were levels within that, so there was some gamification going on, which was really exciting. But when it really hit its stride was in the summer with the Summer Movie Guide, when you could check into any movie that you wanted, but 10 were EW hot picks of the summer, things like X-Men, Super 8, Horrible Bosses. And you would get these stickers, and not only could you share them, which is great because it just builds engagement and awareness of the different brands, of EW's brands, but you also got entered into a contest to win free movie tickets. So we had the virtual rewards, the stickers, the badging, the games going on, and then you also had a chance for real-life rewards. So it was really a way to keep people aware of EW, engaged in the brand on an all-new social platform.
Great, excellent. David?
So we've tried to keep the same tone that each platform has and evolve with it. So Twitter this year is much different than Twitter in 2007, I believe, when we started our account. It was very one-on-one. It was very personal. Then it became sort of a broadcast system. We use it, I think, a little differently than some other people here because we've gone back to making it very interactive and very one-on-one. And that's where users want to ask us questions, and they want to get those answers publicly. So it might not be to provide information, but opinion, or take a guess, take a stab at what might happen in the future of a show or news or celebrity. But we've been using Twitter in that form, but it's changed. And I think the best thing to do is adapt quickly to that change. It's pretty easy to see when it's coming. The things that are sent to you will change in tone, and you just have to go along with it. And if you're following it, it generally isn't very hard. Facebook is its own thing. I think a lot of people use that in a similar fashion. I love our Tumblr blog because it's so low-key and all the fun little things that we get to do. Celebrity comes in for an interview, those candid shots that we could take, or the odd things that some offbeat show might send to our office. That's a great picture to just stick on Tumblr. It's not appropriate for the website.
So Tumblr's maybe a little bit more the raw view, kind of like, okay.
And it's also the tone of it is a little different. We don't have to be so professional on there. We're on Google+, just starting out, seeing what it's like. I think that the audience will let us know that we're really going for the same thing. And it is a very different audience. So even if we're doing the same thing that we are on Facebook, we might wind up posting different things because it's just going to fit that audience a little better. And the other thing we've done is tried to create what we didn't have. So we had an audience. It was very easy for us to create our check-in system. And now we've used that to, in part, help us with our power rankings. That's one aspect of it. Another is to let users share things. Another is to let them know that a show might be their favorite. And that sounds ridiculous, but if you check into the same show a few times and it's not on your favorite list, well, prompt them. Say, hey, by the way, you've now checked into this a few times. Would you like to add this to your watch list, is what we call it, and get a reminder about it. And it's a very effective way for us to just go back and forth with them and keep getting more and more detailed feedback.
Great. So I know we have a little bit of time left, and I do want to have some time for questions. But before then, I want to do some quick rapid-fire questions for you guys. Okay. So I'll start with David, and then we'll go this direction. So after Twitter and Facebook, or maybe in the reverse order, what do you think is the next up-and-coming social platform?
I think it already has been Tumblr. I think it's there. It's really just like Blogspot turned community. Google Plus, I think, will do well in the end. I can't say it'll dominate over the other ones that currently exist. And I think there's going to be a platform that really starts merging things in the right way. There have been a lot of attempts. And whoever does it right, that'll be the next one. I don't think it's going to be a new closed wall platform. I think it'll be something very open, and it'll interact with many different things, and whoever can do it in the most simple manner, that's who's going to win.
You're the winner. All right, Lisa, what about you?
So just in the spirit of not repeating anything and just adding on, I think I do agree with pretty much everything you said. We're a little bit obsessed with Pinterest right now, actually.
Cool.
Yeah.
Chandra?
I think for us, the next thing we're probably going to be focusing on, in addition to the Google Plus, is LinkedIn. I think there's a huge opportunity there for us, and we really haven't mined that opportunity.
Yeah. How many in the audience recently got about 25 or 30 new connections maybe the last couple of weeks? Anyone else notice that? A few of you? Okay. I think they're